Today, on Rise Up, we delve into some of the sacred dialogues of the riser Abdullah Hashem Aba Al-Sadiq from the School of Divine Mysteries. Who is Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, and why is he a significant eschatological figure for our time? Next, Miracles of the Mahdi. Sister Caroline proves that faith and loyalty to God can truly conquer all and show wonders. Then, Medicine of the Mahdis, divine revelations in the world of medicine and healing. And finally, we answer questions and address statements made in the comments section. This is Rise Up.
Hello and welcome to Rise Up. I'm Alia Halal.
And I'm Irfan Alamgir.
And we want to jump right into our episode for today because we have quite a list of topics that we'd love to cover for you, dear viewers. We are companions of the Savior of mankind in this day and age, Abdullah Hashem Aba Al-Sadiq, who is in fact the riser, or also known as the Qaim in Arabic, from the family of Muhammad. This is a very incredible time we're living in right now. We're seeing various signs of the end times, as mentioned in biblical scriptures, as mentioned in the narrations of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him and his family. We're seeing them come to light. We're seeing these prophecies come true. And we're living in a time where the people who believe in humanity first, who believe in allegiances to God, are gathering together around the one individual on this planet who is calling them to this ideal, and that is the Qaim Aba Sadiq, from him is peace. As his companions, we sit here in front of you on this very channel and on various other media to make sure that the world is aware of his appearance and of his call.
Yes, very excited for today's episode. Excuse me. Today, there is a bit of confusion about who the various personalities are that we are talking about in terms of Imam al-Mahdi, the Yamani. You've heard the term that Alia used again, the Qa'im or the riser. And today is really an opportunity for us to break it down and simplify and clarify a lot of the titles that we refer to when we talk about the end times or the eschatological savior figure that is promised to come in all religions. And I am really looking forward to getting into that. And I think there is definitely scope for discussion on this topic. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Yes, absolutely. And we'd love to take the viewers on a little bit of a journey through the history of this religion and of this call. We say that this religion is a continuation of every true religion that came to this earth through God-sent prophets and messengers. And in light of that perspective, our understanding is that the ones who have established the teachings of this call, the ones who have called the people to Imam Mahdi, are essentially bringing forward not necessarily a new religion, but rather the continuation of the true religions, which for the people seems to be new, because what was true has been forgotten. Hence the word new matter, new jurisprudence, new book, etc., etc. And these personalities that have brought it forward are key personalities. They are important figures that have to be recognized and understood to be who they are. So in today's episode, we want to focus really on a name that the viewers who have been studying this religion or researching this call, who have read The Goal of the Wise, must be very familiar with, and that is the name Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan. Who is Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan? What does the Qaim of the family of Muhammad Aba Sadiq say about him? How are they connected to each other? And why is he significant to us in this day and age? In order to understand more about who he is, we'd love to first go ahead and see from Aba Sadiq himself certain aspects that have to do with Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan. We want to go ahead and see from his lecture series, The School of Divine Mysteries, what Aba Sadiq has said here and there about the Imam, and we'd love to discuss that. Should we go ahead to Sacred Dialogues?
Yeah, let's go to the first clip.
One of the signs, one of the most important signs actually of the emergence of the Mahdi, and that is the sign of the Yamani. So we have these signs that bida' could happen in them. Okay, so the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, they spoke a lot about things that were to happen in the future. signs that were to happen before the coming of the Mahdi, events that would take place during the life of the Mahdi or during the life of the Qa'im, things that would happen to the nation of Islam after the death of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or in the future, you know, if it was the Imams that were speaking about it or narrating it. And all of these signs are subject to change. The actions of the people could change the event taking place, right?
Yes.
So there is a potential for change depending on the actions of the people, but the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam would mention that this and this and this is going to happen because it is the most likely probability based on what is taking place right now on the ground. There are things that are inevitable that must happen. The Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam mentioned them. One of them is the appearance of the Sufyani. The Sufyani became an inevitable sign, and that must happen, that will happen. There was a 100% chance that no matter what the choices of the Muslims are throughout from the time of the Prophet Muhammad all the way until the time of the emergence of the Qa'im, no matter what choices they made, this Sufyani character has to emerge. And that's because of the immense hatred that was in the hearts of the family of Abu Sufyan, whether it was Abu Sufyan or if it was Muawiyah, his son, or if it was Yazid, his son after that. This family, this cursed tree, they had so much hatred towards the Prophet Muhammad and his family that there had to be an enemy that would emerge from their loins in the future that would fight against the Qa'im or the Mahdi. Yeah?
Yeah.
One of the other signs is the appearance of a hand in the sky. Right? This is one of those inevitable signs. Another one of the signs which were inevitable that no bidah can happen to change this is the appearance of a character that's called the Yamani.
So there, Abu Sadiq was discussing with us the signs by which to recognize the times that we live in. And for our viewers in Europe and in the continent of Africa, if you are unfamiliar with Islamic eschatology, it is a really interesting topic. It is a deep topic with a lot of insights into what you should be looking for. And Abu Sadiq mentions two types of signs. He mentions the inevitable signs, and he mentions those signs which are definitely going to appear, and other signs that were mentioned by the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, where the human action can actually result in a change in those signs. But let's focus on the inevitable signs, because these things are destined, predestined, pre-decreed to happen, and they are really the main things that we're going to focus on in this next segment. And Ali Abu Sadiq mentioned the three signs, the inevitable signs in that little segment. He said there would be a character by the name of the Sufyani, there would be a hand in the sky that would appear, and then he ended with the pivotal character of the Yamani.
Yes.
So shall we break it down step by step? Shall we start with the Yamani and then talk about the other signs?
Sure thing, yeah, absolutely. So Yamani is a very important name, something that, like you said, Dr. Irfan, many people out there who are not familiar with Islamic eschatology will wonder what that is. But, you know, I'll have to even, add something onto that. I think a lot of Muslims out there are also unfamiliar with the name Yamani.
Yes.
In particular, the Sunni Muslims.
Correct.
And even a lot of the Shia Muslims consider it a very pointless kind of subject. They see that the Yamani is someone who's going to come. It's not important right now because Imam Mahdi is more important. And indeed, they're both very important figures, because the Yamani is meant to be appearing before Imam Mahdi. And he's mentioned in the narrations as someone who leads the way towards Imam Mahdi. He's mentioned as someone who is on the right side of things. He's a good guy. So obviously, in a time period where you're waiting for Imam Mahdi, logically speaking, you should look to the man who's going to appear first and lead you to him. But unfortunately, the scholars of today's day and age consider it and basically it's not there's no point worrying about it, and they just neglect it, and they don't really teach the people about the Yamani, which is unfortunate, because as we heard from the Qaim, it's an inevitable sign. He has to appear.
Yes.
So Yamani, which also translates to the right hand, he's the right hand of Imam Mahdi, or he is the man who leads the people there, and indeed opens that doorway in the modern century that we're living in the modern time that we're living in, to knowing what's coming next in these end times.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Alia, that you mentioned that such a key figure of the end times to identify the times that we live in, the Yamani, is not really discussed at the forefront of these lectures that these scholars give. You really, really have to look for it. You have to type in Yamani yourself, Yamani narrations, Yamani Ahl Bayt, Yamani Shia, Hadith, and then you'll come across something. There have been maybe a handful of people who have spoken about the importance of this character. There are a couple of lectures that talk about the signs that precede the appearance of the Mahdi, but definitely not representative of the importance, the pivotal central importance this figure holds. And one of the misconceptions, Alia, that they often propagate about the Yamani, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit when you were speaking about him, is that he appears from Yemen.
Yes, exactly. So Yemen, the country Yemen, it's assumed that Yamani must mean that he's from Yemen, where that's not at all actually the case. So we know that the Yamani is a figure that appears, and in the day and age we're living in right now, this term has not been applicable to anyone except one person. One person alone has been able to prove and was at the forefront of proving and providing evidence for the fact that he was that figure, which is a very rich history actually, something that is a huge part of the Islamic history, the modern history, I would say, of this day and age when it comes to Islam. But again, people see it as irrelevant, or the scholars see it as not necessary. And I would even add that they consider, and I'm sure you've seen the same kind of vibe in your research, they see it that it's almost like a conspiracy theory. These are legends. One day something will happen, someone will pop up, and oh look, maybe this person is the Yamani, and it's not important, it's irrelevant, because we're looking to towards Imam Mahdi. And that's just very sad, I think, because it shows the lack of guidance. And him being from Yemen, again, scholars have mentioned it. They've said, oh, maybe he's from Yemen, which is it just shows that there's this huge lack of understanding and knowledge out there. But there is a man who was meant to appear, and he did come out, and he did say in 1999 that he is the Yamani. And that man was Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan. And it actually aligned brilliantly with all the narrations that indicate towards a man who leads towards Imam Mahdi, because Ahmed is a key name that comes when you read about Yamani.
Ahmed is a key name. It is a name that's mentioned in the Quran. It's a name that's also mentioned in the will of the Prophet Muhammad, of course. And when you combine that with the claim, so if a man rises and he says, I am mentioned in the will of the Prophet Muhammad, the key document that we have talked about on many occasions, and if you're not familiar with it as a Muslim, then you should definitely make yourself familiar with it. It is an absolutely crucial narration document upon which your guidance depends in this very day and age. If you don't know about the will, then you will surely be questioned about it, because the Prophet Muhammad said that it is something after which it is written, and you follow it, you will never go astray. There was no mention of Hajj, fasting, charity, or all the other pillars that Muslims hold as central to their belief. The Prophet Muhammad said, those who hold on to the will. Ahmed is mentioned in the will, and then that same Ahmed who claims the will also says he's the Yamani. If the Ahmed of the will says he's the Yamani, then for sure he is the Yamani that was prophesied as a forerunner to Imam al-Mahdi. And Ali, I think this is also an opportunity for maybe us to clarify that with all these titles and names, and of course we talk about the Mahdis that come after
and we've
the
mentioned
Imams.
it. We've mentioned it a lot on the show, so shall we explain it?
Yeah, let's do it again quickly for the benefit of the viewers.
Yeah, and definitely it's an important point to make. Why? Because unfortunately, again, what we see in the mainstream understanding of religion is something that just touches the surface and considers very key concepts to be irrelevant. One of those key concepts you just heard right now from Dr. Irfan, which is the will of Prophet Muhammad. such an important statement that he made. If you hold on to this, you will never go astray. Meaning that there is a way to go astray. You could potentially go astray. You probably will go astray unless you hold on to this. I mean, that's what it means, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And yet it's seen as, oh, and the Prophet wanted to write something, and it doesn't matter, let's move on. But obviously, for anyone out there who's actually loyal to God and actually loyal to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family, and actually cares about their religion, they should be curious. They should be wondering, well, what is this rope that if I hold on to it, I would never go astray? Because that's a very tempting offer, isn't it? I mean, who would not want to hold on to a rope that they would be basically guided by for the rest of their lives? Now, that document, which is the will of Prophet Muhammad, has in it certain names. And it also has in it two groups of people who are mentioned very clearly. And very clearly, they are separated from each other. The first group of people that are mentioned are called the 12 Imams. And these are the 12 vicegerents that come from the line of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family. Those 12 Imams are generally understood to be the guides, and they are called the Ahlul Bayt, and they are called different titles, but they are known by the 12 Shia of the Muslims to be the guides. And there is no dispute within that point. There are different sects of Shia that break off from the 12 Imams, but in general, the majority of the 12 Shia that we are talking about here are following the 12 Imams.
Yes.
So that's fine. And why are they following the 12 Imams? Well, because the will of Prophet Muhammad mentions them.
Yes.
And without that will of Prophet Muhammad, guess what? They wouldn't actually know who those 12 Imams were.
Right.
So luckily, right, the scholars knew to look at the will of Prophet Muhammad to understand the 12 Imams. But then, strangely enough, they stopped there. Even though the will did continue with another group of individuals that, again, were just discarded as irrelevant. By who? By the scholars, unfortunately. And they are called the 12 Mahdis. And that is how the Prophet Muhammad explains it. He says, after them, after the 12 Imams, will be 12 Mahdis. Correct. Who are these 12 Mahdis?
Exactly, Ali. And this is where the first of the Mahdis, who is the successor of Imam al-Mahdi, who is Muhammad ibn al-Hassan al-Askari, the 12th Imam, the hidden Imam, is Ahmed Al-Hassan, and he is the Yamani, and he is the first to claim the will of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, and he came forth in 1999, as Alia mentioned, and this is the time when he said, I am the Ahmed in the will, and he is the first of the Mahdis. Then comes the second character, who is the second Mahdi after Imam al-Mahdi. He's the second Mahdi, and he is the Qa'im, or the riser of the family of Muhammad. And the Qa'im is used numerous times in the narrations from the family of Muhammad to indicate that this is the individual that will once and for all smash the idols of misguidance and create that divine just state with his 313 companions and 50 from among the best of the women in history, and together with the 10,000 and the 12,000 and the other numbers mentioned in the narrations, help to build the divine just state. So the second Mahdi is Abdullah. His name is also explicitly mentioned in the will of the Prophet Muhammad as a character who comes after the 12th Imam, Imam al-Mahdi. So we have Imam al-Mahdi, who is the 12th Imam from the family of the Prophet. We have the first Mahdi is Ahmed, he is the Yamani. We have the second Mahdi, who is Abdullah, who is the riser of the family of Muhammad. These three characters have appeared together. We have had in the past where the Prophet Muhammad was alive, Imam Ali, the first of the Imams, was alive at the same time as him. And then we had Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein, the grandsons of the Prophet Muhammad, the sons of Fatima, and they were, of course, the second and the third Imams. So it is possible for a number of Hujjah to be present together. And we, of course, know from the Ahl al-Qissa that 4 of them were together at the same time, at the time when Islam was being established in the Middle East. So I hope that clarifies this point of the different titles that we use, and there is no more room for doubt in our viewers who are unfamiliar with Islamic eschatology.
Exactly, and we do know that even in the Bible there are so many places where we find that there are different prophets and messengers alive at the same time, and it's not something taken as strange. And perhaps as a viewer out there wondering, why are we bringing this point up? Well, because it is actually asked of us. We are told, well, how can it be possible that Yamani is there and Imam Mahdi is there and the Qa'im is there? Well, it is actually quite possible, because David and Solomon, peace be upon them, were together. Zechariah and Imran were together, and Moses was there, and Aaron was there, and there were different prophets and messengers that spoke with each other, and it was completely normal. David and Samuel were together. It's not out of the ordinary to see this taking place. So we're addressing this concern for anyone out there who may be Muslim and may be wondering, well, what's the point of one when the others are around anyway? And in terms of the fact that there are 12 Mahdis, this is such an important point. And this is such a bewildering point for someone who hasn't heard about it before. Perhaps there's a viewer out there who is from the Christian faith or Jewish or another religion, or maybe they're atheist, or they just have no knowledge of Islam, and for them, hearing that would not be strange. They would say to themselves, all right, they have these people called Mahdis.
Yes.
Interesting. But for Muslims, it is very astonishing. They listen to that and they say to themselves, what are you talking about? What do you mean Mahdis? They're supposed to be Imam Mahdi and that's it. Why? Because it is really not talked about, even though it is present in the books, even though it's been mentioned by Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. The scholars do not talk about it at all. Like, you do not ever. And we can vouch for that because we ourselves were raised in Muslim households. Dr. Irfan, you were raised in a Sunni Muslim household. Yes. I was raised in a Shia Muslim household. And we have never once, in all the lectures we've heard, in all the interactions we've had with different scholars, never once come across the fact that there are 12 Mahdis.
Yes.
And that's strange, because you'd think that that's a very important part of the end times.
You hear about the return of the Imams Aliyah, but you don't hear about the 12 Mahdis. Never. So this is something very important.
Now, Mahdi itself, Mahdi is a title that means the guided one. And we have to make this very clear now. The 12 Imams, of the 12 Imams, the 12th Imam is that Imam Mahdi that the Shia are all waiting for, and the one that they all believe in, and the one that they pray for his emergence. So Imam al-Mahdi is that 12th Imam. He's one of the Imams. He's not one of the Mahdis. He's one of the Imams. With him come 12 chiefs, 12 successors, 12 disciples, as Jesus had 12 disciples. And those 12 who are with him are called Mahdis, and they come to support him and to bring people towards him. So when you hear the name from us, Aba Al-Sadiq, when you hear us say Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, these two individuals are from those 12 Mahdis. Right. I think that's it in a nutshell, isn't it?
That clarifies it, I think.
Shall we go on to the next clip then of Sacred Dialogues?
Let's move on.
In 1999, we had some interesting things take place. In 1999, we had a couple characters appear. In 1999, it was the year that King Abdullah of Jordan was crowned, and he became the king of Jordan. And in 1999, the da'wah, the invitation, the call of a man, also took place. It also became a public phenomenon in Iraq. And basically what happened in Iraq is that Saddam Hussein, Lanatullah alayhi, was, being a tyrant as usual. And he decided that he was going to write around that time period the Quran with his blood. And when he did so, there was a man who gave a prediction, gave a prophecy that this would spell the end of the rule of Saddam Hussein. And right shortly after that happened the American invasion of Iraq. His da'wah starts in 1999. It starts in the Hawza. He enrolls in the Hawza, and he begins to speak to the students there, and he begins to propagate his message. He identifies himself as being the character of the Yamani that is mentioned in the narrations, that it is an obligation to follow. He identifies himself also as being a messenger of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. He claims to the students of the Hawza, and the Hawza is the religious institution that teaches Shia Islam in Iraq and trains all of the Shia ministers and clerics. He informs them that he has had a secret meeting with Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, that the Mahdi, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, appears to Ahmed Al-Hassan in a dream. And he tells him that he needs to go to this particular place and meet him. Yeah. And this occurs not just one time, but several times. And finally, Ahmed Al-Hassan gets up and he goes to that particular mausoleum which he was instructed to go to in his dream. Lo and behold, he finds in the mausoleum the man whom he saw in the dream, whom identified himself as Imam al-Mahdi, Muhammad ibn al-Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam.
So what we heard just there is that a basic breakdown really of the history of how Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan comes into play as a key figure in these times we're living in, how he interacted with Imam al-Mahdi, and why it is that we believe in him, why it is that we say that he is the Yamani of the family of Muhammad, because indeed he was appointed by Imam Mahdi himself, and in fact he was appointed by Prophet Muhammad in his holy will and testament. Peace be upon him and his family. So I think it's quite fascinating that this is something happening in our time period, you know, and it's not something that people are being made aware of, but this platform that we have and these believers that believe in this call, who are numbering in the thousands around the world, do know about it, do believe in it, and are making sure that it's known out there. And there was a time where Jesus Christ himself was preaching, and once he had gone into a disappearance because he had been persecuted and prosecuted, he had people who went out there and made it known to the world that there was a man called Jesus Christ. So this whole idea that the Yamani from the family of Muhammad is Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, and it's not just a whim, is it? It's not just a dream that someone had. It's actually a prophecy coming true.
Yes, it is a prophecy coming true, and there was actually a concurrent appearance. So when the Yamani appeared, we also had the appearance of another inevitable sign, another unchangeable sign, and that was the appearance of the Sufyani, which is of course referring to the tribe of Abu Sufyan, who was one of the chief opponents and enemies of the Prophet Muhammad at the very beginning of the fledgling Islamic state that he was trying to establish. So this character also appears in 1999 and is crowned, which is the King of Jordan, Abdullah. And there is this synchronistic events that happen together like this, and it's definitely worth paying attention to, because this character ends up being a person who carries out tremendous bloodshed and massacres of the innocent people, and particularly those who call themselves the followers of the family of the Prophet, the Shia. And he is a character also that is very much in play in the Middle East right now. So that was another one of the inevitable signs. With the Yamani comes also the Sufyani. So that's two of the undeniable, unchangeable signs that have happened before our eyes. It has been proclaimed already by Abu Al-Sadiq, the Qaim of the family of Muhammad, the second Mahdi, and it is something that all Shia know about. The Sufyani actually gets a lot more traction in Shia communities than the Yamani, unfortunately, which is interesting.
That is a true point.
But here he is here among us right now, and he is obviously a key player in the Middle East as well.
And I really encourage anyone out there who is, for the first time hearing the name Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan or Yamani, to download The Goal of the Wise. And there is a lot of knowledge in there, written by Abu Sadiq himself concerning Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, who is in fact that spiritual leader that brought enlightenment to the Qaim Abu Sadiq. And he is the soul father as well of Abu Sadiq. And there is so much information regarding this incredible character that you really have to go along and check it out, because there is no individual, is there, on the planet who fulfills the criteria of being the Yamani other than Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan. It's just, the facts are what they are.
Yes, and Ali, as you said in The Goal of the Wise, back in the beginning of the days where the call of the Yamani was being propagated in the country of Iraq, and then thereafter also you know, the next time the baton was taken was in Egypt, and of course that's where I came into contact with the call. You have to really remember that Abu Sadiq has made it very easy for those who seek guidance in this day and age, because we didn't have the Goal of the Wise, a manual that has references for every single point. So when you read the Yamani, all the hadith and narrations that have been attributed to the Ahlul Bayt are provided With every hadith there is a reference, so you can find it for yourself. You don't have to go and independently verify. You should do it. And this is the whole point why Abu Sadiq has written The Goal of the Wise in the way that he has, so that anyone can pick up this book, read, the Yamani is this person, and this is the proof, and these are the narrations. So it really makes it so clear, and there is no more room for doubt in this matter.
And I think that something that I would really like to point out here, and we should probably talk about, is an experience, a mental journey that you feel or you experience someone going through. And that is that when they hear that there is actually a messenger of God right now, that there is a viceroy of God in the modern times we're living in, people get startled because we've been so numbed or so conditioned to believe that God has sent His prophets and messengers. He's already done that part of the story, and in this time we don't actually have to expect any face-to-face interaction with a man from Him. And it's a shame, because God is very much a living entity amongst us, and to imagine that He would not do so is actually really discrediting Him, because He would guide us, and He would send someone to ensure that we are guided. And the person He has sent in this time is Aba Al-Sadiq. And the rise of the family of Muhammad is the reason we know about Ahmad Al-Hassan. He's the reason we know about the fact that the Yamani has appeared. He's the reason we know that the Imam, the 12th Imam, Imam Al-Mahdi, has appeared. We can go ahead now and check out the third clip that we have for today that concerns the Yamani Ahmed Al-Hassan from the School of Divine Mysteries. Let's go ahead.
The Imam also became enlightened to the fact that there are these 12 Mahdis. Ahmed Al-Hassan, he says that before that point, he didn't know anything, and he never had thought that he would even work or be involved in the field of religion. He had actually, before this encounter, went to school and studied to be an engineer. But he was chosen by God. And it's not strange for the messengers of God or the infallibles before they are chosen, or before their mission begins, or before their baptism, or before they're sent forward with the Holy Spirit to have a different trade.
Of course,
Yeah, and you know that Jesus was a carpenter.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was a tradesman, and as such. So Ahmed Hassan, he becomes enlightened to the fact that there are actually 12 Mahdis. And Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam shows Ahmed al-Hassan the will that the Prophet Muhammad wrote on his deathbed. And he informs him and shows him in a clear way through the narrations how the Prophet Muhammad, when death approached him on Thursday, it was a Thursday, he gathered some of his companions and family members, and he wanted to write a will. He was forbidden from writing the will. He was accused by one of the people present, which is identified in the narrations as Umar ibn Khattab. He was forbidden from writing down that which he wanted to write down. And Imam al-Mahdi showed Ahmed al-Hassan how the will is a protection against misguidance, because the Prophet says, bring me a paper and pen so I can write you something that if you hold on to it, you will never go astray. So this is a divine promise that is safeguarded, that whatever it is that the Prophet writes in that paper, whoever abides by it, they will never go astray if they believe in the Prophet Muhammad, and the religion of Islam.
So it's quite evident by the narrations, by the scriptures, that anything that had to do with the appearance of the Yamani, any indication of who he would be, all of it was fulfilled by Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, from claiming the will of Prophet Muhammad, to being named Ahmad, to actually appearing in the time that was prophesied he would appear in, which was in alignment with the appearance of the Sufyani, even to the teachings that he brought forward, which were in that time when he brought them forward absolutely revolutionary. He himself was a unique individual. In 1999, Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan came out and very courageously faced these huge scholars of religion, and he faced the biggest school, the Hawza of Najaf, that had to do with Islamic teachings, referring to the Ahlul Bayt, referring to the family of Muhammad, peace be upon him. So the idea that he would go out there and actually face the scholars and demand that we re-establish the legacy of Imam Hussein, which was that allegiance is to God alone. This was something absolutely revolutionary that had not been done before him. And the only individual who has taken that baton and actually gone forward, as is his appointed right to do so, is Aba Al-Sadiq, from him is peace. So indeed, the idea of the Yamani's appearance, the fact that Ahmed Al-Hassan is that individual that the world had been waiting for, and the fact that rejecting him is in fact to reject the will of Prophet Muhammad, which means rejecting Prophet Muhammad himself. This is something that I implore the viewers to take a look at and open their mind to, and understand that this is not a small matter. By no means is it a small matter. It is called an inevitable sign, because the Yamani's appearance has to happen, like it or not. That's basically what God is saying.
That's basically what God is saying. And also you have to bear in mind that the idea that the will was being written is very much in the Sunni narrations. There is a hadith attributed to Abdullah ibn Abbas where he says the Prophet Muhammad tried to write something and he was prevented from doing so. And it's very appropriately called the tragedy of Thursday, or the calamity of Thursday. And it really was a tragedy, and it really, really was the calamity of the Islamic religion, because it was that time where the first of the companions who were close to the Prophet Muhammad severed their connection to God and to the Prophet Muhammad when they refuted him writing the will that he wanted to write for the safekeeping of his ummah, of his community. And this tragedy has resulted in the innumerable sects of Islam that have resulted in this day and age, and those people who did that were directly responsible for creating all the strife and violence that we see among Muslims today.
Yes. Those who believe that this call or this religion is a break away from Islam or another sect or just another group that popped up, absolutely that is not the case. Because let's call it for what it is. The whole entirety of Islam was encompassed in that document written by Prophet Muhammad on his deathbed. The entirety of Islam itself became encapsulated in those words that he wrote, in that holy will and testament that he had written down by his successor Imam Ali. So that will was Islam. That will was the perfection of Islam.
Exactly.
It was the completion of Islam. So holding on to that will is the only way to be a part of Islam at all. And the only one who is claiming to be Ahmed from the will is Ahmed Al-Hassan. And Ahmed Al-Hassan is the Yamani. So now we see the narration state the Yamani will be Ahmed. The narration state that from the 12 Mahdis we have Ahmed, and the narration state that the Yamani must appear. So clearly the Yamani is Ahmed Al-Hassan. And it's very straightforward. It's a clear indication of what we should be believing in our time. And the one who brought light to this and who has taught humanity this religion and this knowledge and brought it forward to people of all backgrounds and all cultures and all these different religions that are believing in it now. That man is Aba Al-Sadiq. That man is Abdullah Hashem. From him is peace. And this is an invitation. This is an invitation to the ones out there who are listening to find out who is Aba Al-Sadiq, who is Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan. Find out for yourselves and see for yourselves the teachings they come with, the creed they follow, the principles they are teaching us. Understand what this call is about. That is what we invite you to, and that is the call to action for today.
Exactly. Well said, Ali, and I think that puts a cap on the whole thing. I think it's very clear and apparent who the Yamani is, and who the riser of the family of Muhammad al-Qa'im is, and how they're related to the 12th Imam, Muhammad ibn al-Hassan al-Askari.
So maybe it would be a good idea, now that we've established the names, the titles, the role they're playing, let's look at that history that they're coming with. What is the story? So I'm sure a lot of people out there are wondering, what is the story of Ahmed Al-Hassan? What is the story of Aba Al-Sadiq? And we'd love to go ahead and look at a quick segment by our special correspondent, Karina Al-Mahdi. She broke down very beautifully the history of Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, how it is that he came to the forefront, and what took place from that point onwards. Let's go ahead and check out that history.
The story begins in the holy city of Samarra, where Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, from him is peace, received a vision that would set him on a revolutionary path. In the vision, Imam Mahdi, peace be upon him, appeared to him near the mausoleum of Sayyid Muhammad, the brother of Imam Al-Askari, peace be upon him. Imam Mahdi ordered him to meet with him, setting the stage for a fateful encounter. After several nights of these visions, the journey began. Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan travelled across Iraq, visiting the holy shrines of the Imams. He visited Samarra, Balad and Baghdad, finally reaching Karbala, where he would meet Imam Mahdi. It was here, in the maqam of Imam Mahdi at the end of Al-Sidra Street, that the two sat alone and spoke. Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, from him his peace, later recalled the significance of this meeting. We sat in the maqam alone, which was almost empty of people, with the exception of the servant of the maqam, who was standing in the woman's prayer away from us. The historical meeting would set the stage for a divine mission, one that would soon shake the very foundations of the world. The Ansar pledge by 2003, Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, from whom his peace, began to gather a group of loyal believers known as the Ansar, or the supporters, who pledged allegiance to his divine mission. Many of them were students from the Hawza, an Islamic seminary. However, fear soon spread as Saddam Hussein's regime began hunting them down, causing most of the pledges to be broken. Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan recounts this difficult time. After that, many of the Hawza students pledged allegiance to me, but then there came to them something of fear, and Saddam's forces began coming after me, so they went back on their pledge and oath. In the end, they agreed upon two things. The first was to accuse me of being a great magician, and the second accusation is that I control the jinn. However, a small group remained steadfast, and by 2004, new pledges were made. Imam Mahdi, peace be upon him, instructed Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan to continue his mission, reigniting the call. These moments marked the early stages of a movement that was just beginning to rise. The turning point came in November 2004. Imam Mahdi, peace be upon him, commanded Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan to publicly announce the call to the world. This momentous event happened in the final days of Ramadan, when Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan was instructed to declare the revolution against oppression. In his address, he stated, "Imam Mahdi commanded me to address the people of the earth in their entirety, and to implement the truth and to raise the words of, 'There is no God but Allah, for verily Allah's word is the highest, and the word of the disbelievers is the lowest.'" This was a clear and urgent call for all the believers to rise up in support of justice, guided by the teachings of Imam Mahdi, peace be upon him, and his representative, Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, from whom is peace. By 2007, the movement took a new turn as Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan entered a period of occupation, also known as the silent absence. Due to betrayals of some of the Ansar, he withdrew from public life, fulfilling a prophecy from Prophet Muhammad: "Be cautious, when the fifth from the seventh of my sons is lost. Silence until Allah gives him permission to emerge." Imam Ali also prophesied this confusion and absence. There will be a confusion and an absence for him. People will go astray in it, and some others will be guided in it. For 6 years, from mid-2007 onwards, Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, from whom is peace, was neither seen nor heard from. This period of silence tested the faith of the Ansar. Even in his absence, the seeds of the revolution continued to blossom. More people began to hear the call and join the movement. Despite the absence of their father, the revolution was far from over, and the story continued to unfold as more believers came to recognize the truth. From his first encounter with Imam Mahdi, peace be upon him, to the public proclamation of the call and the subsequent silent absence, Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan's journey has been one of divine guidance and revolutionary awakening. Each step along this timeline is a testament to the enduring power of truth, faith and perseverance. The story continues today as more and more people answer the call, pledging their allegiance to the truth and preparing for the return of justice and peace in this world.
It's a very beautiful story when you look at it. All the right parts of what a story should have are in there, because we find that there's a man who stands beginning a hero's journey, very sincere of heart, very pure, very hopeful for goodness in the world. And this is why, and we know from the sermon of Hajj and the sermon of the meeting and these various sermons of Ahmed Al-Hassan that you can actually go ahead and check out on the website. We find that he wants to enter the hawza, or the school that would teach him this Islamic knowledge, because he was just wanting goodness, and he believed that with God would be goodness. And this is what he believed, where he believed God would be found, in that school where they say there are all these great scholars who are so knowledgeable, they speak about Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Maybe I should go learn as well. And he goes there and he is bitterly disappointed, he says, by the corruption he faces and the amount of tyranny that he finds there, and the injustices.
Yes, the rejection and the backlash of the scholars of misguidance who fulfill the prophecy of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan walks through the doors of the seminary in Najaf, and he brings to them a document upon which the entire religion of Islam is based, and they reject him outright. They do exactly as was done in the past with Jesus the Messiah when he came to the Pharisees and read from the scroll of Isaiah. We've mentioned this before, of course. But peace be upon Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, the companion of the will, the right hand of Imam Al-Mahdi, and the first of the 12 Mahdis, for his courageous stance, his illuminating sermons, and his readiness to sacrifice himself for the sake of all those who seek guidance.
Yes, absolutely. Peace be upon Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, a man who stood for the supremacy of God alone and didn't care that he was the only voice calling for that in a time where he was surrounded by enemies and so-called friends who were true hypocrites and who had within them the desire for power and for wealth, and they were greedy and they were selfish and they turned against him in the 11th hour. So peace be upon this great individual who opened the door in this day and age back to supremacy belongs to God. A concept that had just absolutely been eradicated, and nowhere on earth could you find anyone calling towards God's supreme supremacy and God being the only one who is entitled to it, the only one carrying a banner that said on it allegiances to God. That was Ahmed Al-Hassan back in 1999, and it was only because of his bravery and his courage that the people out there with sincerity within them began to wake up. And that is why we find that in 2011, when Aba Al-Sadiq, from him is peace, the second Mahdi, is also enlightened by Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, and indeed he is the one appointed in the will of Prophet Muhammad as the companion of Ahmed Al-Hassan, the one who with Ahmed Al-Hassan would bring people into the fold of truth. It was because of the great work of Aba Al-Sadiq that the voice of Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan began to be heard by people all over the world. And many can testify to the experience of listening and hearing that voice for the first time, and that immediate awakening of the mind where you realize there is a familiarity there, and this has to be a man from God.
Yes.
I know I went through that. I'm very sure that you also testified through to going through that, and it was quite something, right?
Most certainly, Alia. Nobody gave a platform to the promised Yamani as much as Aba Al-Sadiq did from the platform of Egypt. No one published his works as much as Aba Al-Sadiq did in Egypt. His book, the Book of Monotheism, no one promoted it more than Aba Al-Sadiq, Abdullah Hashem, the riser of the family of Muhammad and the successor of Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan. So Egypt really became a platform from which the Yamani spoke to the world, and I think this can't be disputed. Myself and many others, we would follow the lectures that the Ansar in Egypt would give on the works of Ahmed Al-Hassan, simplifying concepts such as monotheism. By the way, if anybody wants to learn monotheism, there is no better book written other than by Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan, the Book of Monotheism, the Kitab al-Tawheed, and this has also been freely available, and it's on our website for anybody who seeks knowledge of monotheism. Download it today.
And something else that you can download from the website and read in several languages now is the Mahdi's Manifesto, a very important piece of writing that outlines the goals and the ambitions of Aba Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, through the teachings again of Imam Ahmed Al-Hassan. And a very critical piece of writing that must be read by anyone out there who's wondering, what does Imam Mahdi want from me today? If you want to understand why Imam Mahdi was meant to appear and what his mission really is, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family said years and years ago, hundreds of years ago, he said, a man will come from me called the Mahdi who will fill the world with peace and justice. What does that even mean? How does that make sense to us today? Well, if you want to know, you can read the Mahdi's Manifesto and you'll understand exactly what Prophet Muhammad was talking about. And there is someone that we really wanted to discuss that with today. Right, Irfan?
Yes, we really did. We wanted to get the insight of Professor Arya Razfa, who is a professor of linguistics at the University of Illinois. He has a deep fascination and interest in religions, the Abrahamic religions in particular. He has a knowledge of the Hebrew language, Arabic, and he is also a contributor in the book, The Goal of the Wise. He helped to edit the book, and he also wrote the foreword to the book, which was a tremendous piece of writing. And he joins us hopefully now over Skype. Hello, Professor Razfa. Welcome to Rise Up.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to talk to you about this.
Yes, so am I.
Yes.
So we've been talking, Professor, for a while now about the Mahdi's Manifesto on various episodes of Rise Up. It's such an important piece of writing. You yourself have been, like Dr. Irfan said, you were the one who wrote the foreword of The Goal of the Wise, and you spoke about it. There's a piece on our channel where you speak about The Goal of the Wise as well. The Mahdi's Manifesto is another piece of writing by Aba Al-Sadiq. Can we have your stance on it, your perspective?
Yes. First, I'd like to wish peace upon all the viewers who are listening, and it's truly an honor to be able to discuss all of these works, and especially at this moment in history. The manifesto itself, I think, is a compressed version of The Goal of the Wise. It's written in simple form so that everyone can understand it, because I think The Goal of the Wise is much more complex. But anyone can read it, anyone can understand it, and I think this is actually a sign of its genius, because, as Einstein said, if you're not able to say something simply, you don't know it well enough. And clearly, this manifesto, especially in its style that it's written, which it sort of reduces everything to the three most important concepts: leadership, divine leadership, establishing a covenant, and also the third step, which is becoming part of a community that's based on divine leadership. And I think this manifesto identifies the three most important components of what needs to be done, especially in the current context. With regard to leadership, it raises the question of helping us have a unquestionable methodology for identifying a divine leader. Because when you mention leadership, people's minds generally first goes towards things like democracy and choosing leaders from amongst ourselves, usually rooted in our our individual ego or the collective ego or self-interest. But here, when you are looking for divine leadership, you're looking for someone who places the interest of the people ahead of his own personal interest. And this has been true from the very beginning, from the appointment of Adam and all the way to the appointment of all the major and minor prophets, and all the way to today. This has never stopped, and it shouldn't stop, because if divine appointment stops, then God stops communicating with his creation. And I think this would be as we've seen, it is a travesty, and having this view of religion, I think, is very flawed.
Yes. Professor Rasfa, we also have been covering on our show Rise Up the strife and bloodshed that has been happening in the Middle East. Of course, we know that the Middle East is mainly prescribes to an Islamic viewpoint, and they are the companions of the Sixth Covenant. And now with the manifesto coming to the fore, it is the invitation to a new covenant. How do you think it will be received in a land where there has been so much strife for so long and the people have suffered in such horrific conditions of just being oppressed by the tyrannical rulers of these states?
I think it will be received well by the people. I think it will be a threat to those who have usurped the position of leadership. They naturally want to silence it, mock it, fight it. But as Gandhi said, eventually, the truth prevails. So I think, this issue of leadership, divine leadership, wilaya, is at the heart of all the confusion and ignorance that pervades, especially the Muslim majority lands. Because the Muslim majority lands have not been under the correct leadership, the divinely appointed leader, for a very long time. And there have been a number of ideologies that have emerged and taken power with sort of a implicit, if not explicit, understanding, or they want people to, they like to project this meaning that they are somehow divine, especially, the scholars. Whether it's in the Sunni majority lands or the Shia majority lands, you see that there's this sort of tacit, implicit, and sometimes not so tacit and implicit, very explicit sort of conveying that their leader is somehow divinely appointed, and this is not the case. And so I think one of the most important contributions of this call from the very beginning has been the law of knowing the divine leader.
Yes.
And I think this is something that the manifesto makes very clear, and it is very easy to understand. And the only thing that makes it not easy is wanting to hold on to the things that we're comfortable with. It's almost like it's too good to be true. And because it's too good to be true, or we realize sort of the consequential aspect of this, we have to give up some of the ideas about leadership that we've been sort of conditioned in, and accept the divinely appointed leader. Because once you've identified the divinely appointed leader, then it follows from that you need to do something about it, right? And that Holy Spirit that resides within that divinely appointed leader is what helps us achieve the objective of justice, peace, and prosperity.
Yes. I think it was also quite fascinating how when Aba Sadiq, from his piece, begins the manifesto, the beginning of it, he goes into the Egyptian revolution, and how it was a matter that the people wanted change. It was a matter that they had enough of Mubarak, and they wanted something to change now and become better. But it was like a body without a head. This is how he describes it. That the emotion was there, the impulse was there, the understanding was there, but then what comes next, that was missing. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the world is kind of in that state right now as well.
Yeah, and that really resonated with me as someone who, I was 8 years old. Maybe I can give you a little bit of my personal history.
Yeah, please do.
I moved to Iran after kindergarten. My parents wanted to go back and live there, and then within a year there was this revolution. And at the beginning of the revolution was a very popular revolution where everyone sort of had grievances, and they wanted to create a better utopic type of state. And out of that emerged a leader, a religious leader, and a religious doctrine, right? That really claimed the mantle of the 12th Imam, and this sort of became the bedrock for what we've seen in the last 45 years, and for the most part, many people have become disillusioned with a divine system, because this system, which implicitly and explicitly claimed the authority, the wilaya of the 12th Imam, Muhammad ibn Hassan Askari, has not only not created a divine just state, because actually that would be one of the main proofs of a divine leader. Like, you know, if you have not produced a divine just state, then you cannot be divine.
Exactly.
So maybe the case of Egypt was a very short-lived episode, but the case of Iran is ongoing, and I think you know, it sort of helps us think about the importance of this idea, and you know, and how we will, and of course the main pillars of that ideology are the scholars, right? The self-appointed signs of God, the self-appointed proofs of God, the self-appointed, you know, on and on. And no one really questions that. And you see right now, the youth especially, and many people who were sort of youth 45, the youth of yesterday and the youth of today, are all starting to revisit this fundamental error that was made. And, you know, in every error, I think also good eventually comes out. People are becoming more aware. I mean, people didn't even know any of these things. So at least now they're studying it, and now with the internet, you know, all these things are publicly available, so people can look up those books that were sort of mysterious books before. And this dawah, as it's called, has brought out a lot of those books, made it available to the people, especially a book like Hafez Sharif, which for me personally was a very impressive book, especially what it had to say about the origin of language, because as a linguist, that's something that always fascinated me. And expanding our ideas about the meaning of words, the meaning of the letters, and Abu Sadiq and Imam Ahmed, they both were able to articulate this and make this available, and that was the second aspect. So in addition to claiming the will, which was also something none of us probably had heard of.
No, exactly.
You know, the idea of the 12 Mahdis that follow the 12 Imams, and the naming of the first 3 Mahdis. And then just recently, you know, I think this is very important, I think, for the viewers, that both the name of Ahmed and Abdullah are actually in the Quran that's in our hands.
Yes, right? That's such an incredible piece of knowledge that recently came out, the name Abdullah being in the Quran with the root word of Qaim in the same verse. How wonderful was that?
Yes, I thought that was another nail in the coffin.
Yes.
Nail in the coffin of the scholars. No, it was really interesting, Professor, to hear you contrast the Arab Spring with the Iranian Revolution that happened at the end of the 70s. And particularly, it seems as though the Iranian regime is a lot more pernicious in the sense that it creates this disillusionment among the youth, because these are the people who rule in the name of Imam al-Mahdi. They, under the ruse of Wilayat al-Faqih, they take the throne away from God's true vicegerent, don't they? And they have left this very bitter and almost a kind of a resentment towards the Islamic religion as a consequence of their usurping the rights of the Ahlul Bayt.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. This word that you use, bitter and resentment, I think is accurate. You know, you don't have to go far to talk to any youth who both the youth of today and the youth of yesterday who doesn't have that feeling because of all the injustice they've seen from those who have claimed these titles and the double standard by which they establish. For example, the chants that we all hear all the time against Israel and America, but at the same time, they themselves are basically in lockstep with those that they are criticizing. And what makes it worse is that they claim the name of the 12th Imam, and they're not letting the people understand the true methodology of identifying the 12th Imam, right? And or the Imam of the time, any divinely appointed leader. And it's sort of left to slogans and indirect kind of insinuations through the music that they produce.
Propaganda, really.
It really is. It really is that. It's not something. I mean, I've heard and I've seen from many reports where you have people who, if they claim to be associated with the 12th Imam, they're probably going to be in jail. I mean, we saw the persecution of many of the Iranian believers. Their families are harassed. There's books that are produced. So obviously, this call to leadership, and this is actually what I want to say is that when we met with the professors back in March,
yes,
and they were evaluating sort of the nature of this call, and those people out there, they'll say this is a cult, and they'll say, they throw all these words out there, right? And what Susan Palmer, she's one of the professors who came, she said something very interesting that I remember. She said, well, this call, the climb, the riser, is claiming the highest position that you could possibly claim from the very beginning.
Yes, she did say that.
And she also said, when you look at most of these self-interested cults, these narcissistic cults, they usually build towards a position like that gradually. But when you look at the call of the true claimants, they start divine appointment from the very beginning. And they root their claim in publicly available scriptures, right? And all these other false claimants, because people always start to go through this, distinguishing a real claim from a false claim. I don't want to go too deep into that right now, but I think the manifesto actually helped us think about that.
But, Professor Asfar, just very quick, there's a slight technical issue. If you could just lower your volume very slightly and then continue.
On the
I'm
speakers,
so sorry
just
for interrupting there.
There we go. Maybe that's
better. That should work. Yes, please go on.
Yeah. So I lost my train of thought. But yeah. So basically, if this claim, if you look at the bold claim that divinely appointed leaders make, when they have nothing in their hand, they have no followers, right? They have no material possessions. They have no way of. They just come out and they say, "This is who I am. I've been appointed," and they'll reference a scripture, they'll reference something that's available in the hands of the people, and then they start to demonstrate their knowledge. You see this, and then they're always calling to the supremacy of God, not the supremacy of themselves, right? And this is something that I think is another clear evidence that I think people can focus on, is that when you make such a claim and there's really no place to go after, you have no choice but to actually deal with it, examine it, and you're starting to see it manifest itself, right? I think the verse from Surah Jinn that was quoted, verse 19 from Surah 72, I believe, yes. That the name, the riser, says the riser Abdullah, he calls, right?
Yes.
Amazing.
And then you see, I was like, this was not mentioned until I think this week.
Yes, exactly.
So even the Quran that we say that is not complete, because and the main thing that makes it not complete is that we know divine leaders were appointed after the Prophet Muhammad, but it's not in the Quran in a very simple and explicit way, right? So it took somebody from God to come and show it, right, to extract it for the public, and now it's like irrefutable.
Yes.
Now the only thing that prevents people from actually recognizing it and moving towards it is self stuff, self-interest, egos.
Willful ignorance.
Well, I think, I mean, ignorance, it's almost like deliberate ignorance because you know what this means.
Yes, some shrewd observations there by Susan Palmer for sure, and the highlighting of the verse of the Quran that links the name Abdullah with the riser is also absolutely fascinating. Professor Rasfa, you obviously have family and back in Iran, so you're connected there, and you also are obviously based in the United States. In terms of the Persian community now that has been disillusioned for so long with the so-called Islamic Republic that the state of Iran professes to have, what do you think is going to be the response now in terms of the manifesto for a Persian audience that have suffered at the hands of the scholars, probably more so than any other nation? I mean, the only other nation that comes close is probably Iraq. And what do you think how their response will be? You obviously talked about the people on the ground in Iran who are being persecuted actively by the regime and its intelligence elements. But in terms of those, I was thinking particularly in the West of a Persian origin, how do you think they'll latch on to the teachings of the manifesto of the Mahdi?
I actually think, from personal experience and just thinking about it intellectually, I think they will grab onto this. I think Persians have a long history of belief. I think atheism and rejecting God is not an option. And they've always had this love for what's called their wilayat, the divine leader. It's an ancient history starting from... I mean, I was talking to... Let me tell you a personal story. I was talking to my cousin just a couple of days ago. And he said many youth in Iran, they just want to reject the last... Not just the last 45 years, they want to reject the last 1,400 years. They want to go back to the pre-Islamic history of Iran. They're very proud Persians. That's the identity that's very core for them. And he said, when you say Cyrus, peace be upon him, that has a tremendous alchemical effect. He didn't use the word alchemical, I am. But it just sort of, what is this? Right away. Because Cyrus and Artaxerxes and Darius and all these Persian prophet kings have sort of been put under they've been silenced.
Definitely.
And now you have this call that comes and puts the pre-Islamic history in such a light.
So true.
Light. I mean, it was Persians who identified Jesus, right?
Exactly. The three wise men, they were of Persian origin, obviously, yes.
Exactly. And you go into the Arab world today, and the word magi is a racial epithet. So I think reclaiming these terms, and that's really what this whole call is about, reclaiming all these words and symbols and stories.
The inheritance of the prophets and messengers.
Exactly, and there's so much in Persian history. You have the tomb of Daniel, you have the tomb of Esther and Mordecai, you know, and this call is telling the world that look, you know, Cyrus and Artaxerxes and Darius,
yes.
you should not only, you should celebrate these characters. I mean, here's a question I ask. There is not one street, you'll be very hard-pressed to find a single boulevard or street or even an alley named after Cyrus the Great in Iran today.
Right.
You know, they'll name him after all these other names, but they've ignored 1,200 years of prophetic tradition. And here, this call is actually bringing back and helping the Persians reconnect their 1,200 years before Islam and the 1,400 years since Islam. And in the very near future, inshallah, we will know sort of all the divinely supporting characters of the last 1,400 years as well. You know, I have some ideas who might be, but I think we need to wait until Abu Sadiq confirms.
It is exciting. It's exciting to know there's a lot more that we're going to hear about, and what we've already heard so far is so mind-blowing.
Yes.
And like you said, reclaiming that inheritance that truly belongs to the people of God, and it's a beautiful time, which leads me to a question regarding the manifesto. The time we're living in, where Abu Sadiq is, and he says it in the 3rd chapter of the manifesto, the way the divine just state is meant to be established, and how it is that he predicts it will take place. And I thought it was so incredibly revolutionary that the whole world had been wondering this whole idea of Imam Mahdi and how he's going to spread peace and justice, apparently. How would that happen? And Abu Sadiq explains it in such a simple way in that chapter. So it's very refreshing to know that there is a humane way to establish a sanctuary and that this is how it will happen. Can you comment on that? Chapter 3 was so beautiful, and it ended in such an amazing way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the experience with the professors, the conference that we had in March, and that we will, God willing, continue to have. I mean, you could see the transformation of professors just within a 2-3 day period.
Yes.
I mean, anyone who's there can vouch for this, and I'm sure they will. I mean, they were skeptics. You know how professors are. They're skeptics. They don't believe in anything.
Yes.
They sort of want to say that you know their ego, their academic ego, sort of doesn't want to admit to something. But then when they were hit with the reality of it, and they saw the community, and you know, they couldn't help but just be, you know, it's like it sort of reminded me of when Joseph entered the room and all the women had knives in their hands, and they started to cut themselves.
Yeah. They were deeply affected. They were.
Great analogy.
We all witnessed it.
So I think everybody needs to experience that, and that only happens, and this is the point I was trying to make. That only happens when you have that sincere ring of people, and the leader is very humble. He didn't come above. He didn't come from like the platform. He was just one of the people. In fact, when you're in the basilica, you'll notice his picture is like at the bottom of the door.
Yes, it's quite hidden away. You actually have to look for the picture of Abu Sadiq in the basilica because it's hidden away in a fashion that everyone else is at the forefront, as he had wanted that to be the case. He wants to be in the back. He doesn't want to come out there as in an arrogant fashion at all.
Yeah, and this is what these professors will write about, and they have already spoken about just the entire, I mean, every time they've experienced, I mean, these are professors who studied like new religious movements, they studied cults, they've done all this, and they say all these other guys, they come in with this narcissistic, arrogant aura. But not Abu Sadiq, he didn't come with that.
Beautiful.
And that was like, you know, it's a sign of, it's just like, it reminded me of when in the story, the Islamic story of the Bahila, the Christians were waiting for, they said, if this man comes with an army, then we know he's not a prophet, but he came with his Ahlul Bayt, his daughter, his son, his two grandsons, and his nephew, right? Yes. And,
wow.
And because he came in such a humble position, they said, we are not going to participate in an implication with these five. And I felt, I mean, this was not like an implication situation, but you sort of understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
right?
It's almost like there could have potentially been mental conflict or like a disagreement of opinion, but everyone let their guard down just by the humanity in the room.
Yeah, by the humanity, the humility, the pure love that was exhibited, people felt the energy.
Yes.
They really did. And I think that's ultimately what happens to people. They feel the energy, their soul picks up on it. This is not, at the end of the day, this is not a logical, intellectual thing. This is a spiritual experience. That's what moves people. And that's what a divine leader does. A divine leader moves the spirit of the people.
And I suppose we could see this as a sort of like a seedling of how it would be in the formation of a divine just state. Because that understanding and that love and that humility that we saw in the Basilica that touched the hearts of all these people who, like you said, Professor Asfar, may have very well just left with an idea that this is totally wrong or this is totally not the truth, but they were touched. And we see that in Chapter 3 of the Manifesto, that's kind of the same understanding we get, that the divine just state would be established by people seeing it and believing in it and wanting to support it, and it will just grow organically as a concept that should exist on earth.
Absolutely, and this is what the verse in Surah Jinn actually says. It says, "He will call and you will see it increase."
Yes.
Look, right? And it's this and this is the beauty of the manifesto and the call and Gold Wise and everything been embarked on the last how many years, 25 years or so. Is that it is a true word from a true messenger, and it hits people in the heart, and they don't even. This is what Eileen Barker says. I don't know what's happening to me.
Yes, that was an interesting experience to see.
I don't know what's happening. I think that's pretty much the template.
Yeah, no, it was really good to see some confounded scholars visiting the headquarters of the Ahmadi Religion of Peace and Light here in the UK, and it was really interesting to hear some amazing insights from you, Professor Asfar, on the Manifesto of the Mahdi, and the way you articulated the kind of journey from the first to the final chapter. I think a lot of people will find a lot of benefit in that, and I think particularly the way you highlighted the beleaguered Persian people and that reclamation of the ideology that is very much present in this call, where characters of the past who are mentioned in the Bible should be reclaimed and should be celebrated and have been by this true religion of the Seventh Covenant. I think there's definitely something brewing, the way you're talking about these different ideas from the Cyrus the Great, Artaxerxes, and then moving on to the three wise men that came at the birth of Jesus Christ. I think you are probably working on something right there, and I think there is something to be written on this.
Oh yes, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for joining us today, Professor Asfar. We really appreciate your time. I know it's very early for you over there in the United States, and hopefully we will speak again on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you, Professor.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that was Professor Arya Rasfar. He was sharing with us his insights on the Mahdi's Manifesto, a brilliant summary of what it is that you have to look forward to when you download that manifesto and read it for yourselves. A very brief 28-page summary of what it is we believe in and why it is that you should be joining the call of Aba Al-Sadiq, from him is peace, because in it is the call of humanity first. In it is the invitation towards a flag that says on it, allegiance is to God. So look into the matter, download the manifesto, and once again, thank you very much to Professor Arya Rasfar. Now we can go on to the next part of our show that I've been quite excited to actually
I can do that
go
next
into.
time. Sorry.
Which has to do with one of the miracles, one of the great miracles that we're seeing recently in the community. And again, we've had on our show our dear beloved sister, Caroline Hubin.
Yes.
And this miracle actually happened to her. It has to do with her father. And it was something that deeply touched all of us, because it is, again, a brilliant example of how great miracles can take place if you put in your part of the faith that you're meant to have in God and in the riser Aba Al-Sadiq. So should we go ahead and look at the story?
Yes, another great miracle, and miracles are something worth contemplating on. They happen to those with faith, faith in the true vicegerent of God in every day and age. And let's go to this miracle by Sister Caroline.
So about a year and a half ago, my father was diagnosed with cancer. He had an operation for it. He got therapy. And then he was told that it got a bit better. He was fine for a while, for 2 or 3 months. And then once when he went for a checkup, he got a very bad diagnosis, which was that the cancer had actually not been cured, but what happened was that it spread through his entire body. They mentioned that it was now in his liver, his lungs, in many internal organs, in his intestines, and there was nothing that they could do for him. They told him, we could maybe give you some therapy with painkillers to make your life, you know, a bit nicer, but you have to die. Like, this is terminal and we cannot help you with this. So he called me, he told me this on the phone. It was obviously a very big shock, because he's also not that old. He's still around 60, and I was really shocked that, you know, it just suddenly ended like this and that he was gonna die. But at the same time, I'm here in the community of Aba Al-Sadiq, and I'm also responsible for the security, for the legal works. We have a lot of people that are persecuted refugees, people that constantly need my help. And at the same time, also I feel the responsibility that I made hijrah, I committed to being and living with Aba Al-Sadiq. And he gave me tasks, and I felt the need to stay. I felt the need not to go and see my father, because it's almost like a soldier leaving their post. You came to your Imam and now you should stay here. And I made that choice really with that in mind, because of course I would have liked to see my dying father in concept, you know, one last time, because he said he wasn't able to travel here. So I knew that that means I'm never gonna see him again. But I made that choice because I thought it was the right thing to do. And I left it at that, and around 2 or 3 weeks later, my father was actually admitted to the hospital. He was throwing up. He had a lot of symptoms. He couldn't eat for several days, and they thought it was because of the tumors in his intestines. And my mother got him admitted to the hospital, because she said he can't stay in his flat like this any longer. He needs, you know, he needs to get infused with, and he is not eating at all. And so he did. He went to the hospital. He was in a very bad condition. But then in the hospital, they scanned his intestines to see like which of the tumors was causing it. And then they said, but we can't actually find any tumor. Like, there is no tumor. It's all gone. And my mom said she could really not believe it, so she made them do more tests. Like, she made them do an MRT and a full body scan, because she said he has tumors like all over his body. How can you not find them? And they found absolutely nothing. In none of his organs, nowhere. They didn't find any tumors, anything. He is completely cancer-free, completely fine. And for my family, it was just a total shock. My mom actually did call it a miracle, even though my parents are not religious, so she doesn't really know how to explain it. They tried to explain it by, oh, maybe the files got mixed up, we don't really know what happened, not really sure. Really, there is no logical explanation for this. But we know, and I know, that it was a miracle. It was from God, because it was the right choice to stay with the Imam and not leave the Imam, and to stay by his side and to consider it your divine duty that God always comes first and the Imam of your time comes first, you know.
I mean, if that's not a miracle, I don't know what is a miracle. Can you imagine, like, someone is completely, he's going to the hospital, he's told that his body is ridden with cancer. It's going through the blood, it's all over him now. There's no way that this can end well, and it's unfortunate, and we have to close the book on this, and there's no really way to, all we can do is improve your lifestyle, really. This is what we're hearing happening to Caroline's father, and the absolute 180-degree angle on the other side of the story where suddenly he's completely cancer-free.
Yes.
And there's no explanation. That was such an amazing day when we heard that. We were celebrating, we were giving her hugs and telling her, oh my goodness, congratulations. But what we were really, really delighted by was how much our faith had been enforced by that event. Yes,
it was a true faith healing that we witnessed in this case with Sister Caroline's father. She had, of course, anytime we hear news of anybody's parents who become suddenly very ill and terminally ill, it's obviously a source of great consternation to the community here. And Sister Caroline was an absolute champion in the way that she handled these feelings that you always go through when a close loved one gets a diagnosis of the severity that her father got. But she had absolute faith in God and in the man sent by God, in the vicegerent of God, Aba Al-Sadiq, the Qaim, and the riser of the family of Muhammad, and the list of the miracles just keeps piling on. Reversal of cancer, reversal of sort of heart disease with less than 5% chances of survival. We've seen reversal of kidney failure. We've seen all of these things happening before our very eyes, and it just adds to the faith and to the certitude that we have that the companion of the will, Abdullah Hashem Aba Al-Sadiq, is indeed the riser of the family of Muhammad, the bringer of the seventh covenant with mankind, the final covenant that leads to the divine just state being established here on earth.
Absolutely. We are a people who truly do believe that the body, the mind, the soul, these are the components of the human that must be taken care of by the Spirit of God. It is the messenger of God today who can truly be that guardian and that shepherd. And it's no surprise that Caroline's father was fully healed, because indeed Caroline is a great companion of the riser Aba Al-Sadiq. And we've seen so many miracles, like you said, Dr. Irfan. So him becoming or getting cured is not something surprising to us, but it was indeed surprising to those around him who tried to make sense of the matter by saying things like maybe the files got mixed up or something of the nature, which is very unlikely. Yes. I mean, in a hospital setting, to mix up someone's files from being completely cancer-ridden to being completely healed of cancer, it doesn't really make sense. But
remarkable.
It is something unique, it's miraculous, and we're grateful that it happened. And it's a great segue, actually, to our next segment, because we want to discuss here the great healing powers of God and how it is that we can take the knowledge from the Spirit of God Himself in order to heal the mind, the body, and the soul. And that takes us to medicine of the Mahdis.
Yes, medicine of the Mahdis. Always excited to talk about this subject. Very passionately feel that there are alternative ways that people can be treated for ailments, chronic diseases that are very prevalent around the world, in the developed and the less developed world. So yeah, let's jump in. So today's topic is truly a prophetic medicine. It is not just mentioned in Islam and the narrations attributed to the Prophet Muhammad and his household, the Ahlul Bayt, but it also goes way back with the first written documentation in a trauma manual going back to ancient Egypt over 2,000 years before the Common Era, in which it is used and talked about for its medicinal properties. And not just ancient Egypt, we have the father of medicine, the man from whom a lot of the people who graduate medical school take their oath, which is Hippocrates. He talks about this substance as well that is found in nature, that is used to heal all kinds of ailments. I, of course, talk about nature's gold, honey. Honey is really, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said that in honey lies the cure to all ills and maladies.
Wow.
Honey is mentioned in the Old Testament of the Bible. It's mentioned in Proverbs, where it's linked to health and well-being. It's mentioned in the book of Exodus, when it is referred to the Promised Land being referred to as the land of milk and honey, again indicating towards a substance that is associated and connected with well-being and human prosperity. So there is a chapter in the Quran, actually, which is called the chapter of the bee, or Surah An-Nahl. It is the 16th chapter of the Quran, and if we bring up the ayah from it, ayah 69 on the screen, it reads, "There emerges," referring to bees, "from their bellies a drink, varying in colors, in which there is healing for people. Indeed, in that is a sign for a people who give thought."
That's a very fascinating verse. Really, God is investing there on talking about honey itself and the bee, and the whole chapter of Surah An-Nahl is about the bee.
Yes.
So there has to be some spiritual aspect to this great substance and why it is so healing and so useful.
There is definitely a spiritual aspect to it, because the preceding verse, Ali, actually talks about the fact that God inspired the bees.
Interesting.
You know, He inspired them to show them their ways in the land. And then it talks about this healing substance that comes forth from their bellies, in which human beings have been using for many, many years, thousands of years, in various traditions around the world for its medicinal and healing properties. We've all, of course, heard of Manuka honey, a famous type of honey that is native to Australia and particularly to New Zealand. And it has many, many, many healing properties. So let's begin with the fact that honey has a slightly lower pH. But before I actually get into that, I want to talk about the different types of honey, because the honey that was around at the time of the Prophet Muhammad and at the time of Hippocrates and all of these other ancient civilizations, it was actually a form of honey that we call raw honey. It was minimally processed honey. So this is the honey that has not been filtered. It has not been pasteurized. It is taken in these honeycombs that people carry around in their little pots, and they bring it home, and then they can turn it into the runny fluid liquid honey that we're all familiar with today. But the best type of honey is really the honey that is found in its raw, natural, organic form. And this type of honey is usually not the type that you can get from the supermarket shelves, although there are some supermarkets that carry it. The best place to get it is from a local farmer's market or from a friend who has a beekeeping colony.
So this is different from the squeezy teddy bear bottles that you get. It's not the same kind of honey.
Yes, although there are still benefits in that honey. To get the optimal amount of benefit from honey, it should be in the form that I've described, in its natural, organic, raw state. With the proviso and caveat that children less than 1 year of age should avoid it, because there is a certain type of bacteria that's found in honey that can cause botulism or muscle paralysis in children who are less than 1 year of age. So caution there. And it doesn't happen with every child, but in the rare case that it happens, the advice that doctors normally give is that although honey is a cure for many, many ills, avoid it in children who are less than 1 year of age, especially if it's in its unpasteurized, raw, natural form. So let's talk about the first benefit of honey that I wanted to mention, and that is the fact that honey is rich and laden with antioxidants. The free radical damage that happens to cells that result in all kinds of inflammatory processes in the body and also the generation of cancer cells, honey is an antioxidant. It resists this oxidative stress that breaks us down and causes aging and causes illness. Honey is a very potent antioxidant. It is loaded also with prebiotics. So when I say prebiotics, I mean that it contains substances that the human being cannot digest. And you think, well, what's the benefit of that? Because the contrasting term is probiotics, which is probably more people are more familiar with. And these are the good bacteria that is found in fermented foods like yogurts, kefir, sauerkraut, things that you eat that actually help the gut biome with the good bacteria that you put in. Honey is one of those rare foods that is loaded with prebiotics, so that when you consume it, it doesn't necessarily feed you, but it feeds that gut bacteria, their food, that helps them flourish and create this healthy internal environment. And by the way, most doctors will tell you that a lot of human diseases, the origin of it is the gut, because of the foods that we consume that create inflammation in the body. It is the way we are connected to the environment. So if you are feeding the good bacteria in the gut, and there are only a few vegetables and plants that do this in nature, and honey being one of them, which is of course not a vegetable, but it is one of those rare foods that actually acts as a prebiotic. So now, what else does honey contain? It is antimicrobial. It is an antibiotic. It is an antifungal. It regenerates the skin. And I wanted to actually come to a study that was done, that has been done recently, that is very powerful, and it's for aphthous ulcers, or what are commonly known as canker sores. And these are very, very common. We all get them when we're stressed. They happen on the inside of our mouths, that white lesion that appears on the skin surrounded by red inflammation. They're very, very sore. They're the most common type of ulcers that you get in your mouth. And there was a study done, which if we bring the next image up on the screen, it says the efficacy or effectiveness of honey in comparison to topical corticosteroid for treatment of recurrent minor aphthous ulceration, a randomized, blind, controlled, parallel, double-center clinical trial. So a big mouthful of words there. But basically, this is a very robust type of study that was done, which compared the application of honey 3 times a day over these ulcers versus topical steroids, which are, of course, anti-inflammatory, and also with barrier creams that you can get over the counter. And what they found out, to summarize the findings of the study, is that the honey improved the pain at twice the rate of the steroid that was applied, which is the common practice, at double the rate, and actually healed it at double the rate. So the pain went away faster with the honey, and the ulcer itself was healed faster with the honey. 3 times a day application.
That's amazing.
And unlike the creams and things that you have to apply, honey tastes amazing. And
correct me if I'm wrong, but do these steroids, do they have these side effects that are like problematic for the patient?
Heard of side effects of steroids. Steroids, of course, are something that we use sparingly. They have to be used for short periods of time. They're immunosuppressants. They suppress your immune system. They also cause thinning of the skin and other side effects as well. They can also cause your blood sugar to go up if you take it very frequently. So honey has none of the above. In fact, its glycemic index is much better than sugar. It's an alternative to, if you have to choose between sugar and honey, I'd be choosing honey every time. If you're a diabetic, however, if you've got insulin-dependent diabetes or type 2 diabetes, then you have to be careful, because if you're not getting the right types of honey, it can also spike your sugar up very quickly. So that's just also something to be wary about. But yeah, that was a very interesting study. Now, another one I wanted to bring your attention to, if we have time, is the next study, which is treating chronic venous leg ulcers, non-healing ulcers, because they are so badly infected that they just won't heal. And the effects of these dressings that are produced with Manuka honey in particular, and they've done many clinical trials on this, but also other types of medical grade honey. And this study basically shows that with the application of these dressings on leg wounds where you've got deep venous ulcers, for which we also have images, you can see in one of those images where it shows this ulcer on the leg, and you can see how inflamed the skin is around the ulcer and how deep the ulcer is. And then after a few weeks of application with these dressings with medical grade honey. Now imagine applying honey to an open wound. Most people will tell you this is a terrible thing to do. It kind of goes against your instinct because you think honey has sugar in it and therefore that sugar could promote bacterial growth. But no, honey not only kills all the microbes that prevent the healing of these ulcers, but honey actually heals the skin as well. It kills the bad bacteria and it heals the skin. It regenerates the skin. And now for people who have MRSA, which is a very resistant bacteria, particularly common in hospital environment. In the hospital environment, when they are changing dressings of people with diabetic ulcers or venous ulcers or any kind of chronic infected ulcer, honey is now being turned to because it is killing the bacteria that these strong intramuscularly given antibiotics like gentamicin, which can actually affect your kidney function if you are not careful, cannot cope with. So the honey is coming in as ammunition, this ancient thing that has been present with us for many, many years. In honey, there is healing for all maladies. The Prophet Muhammad's words are definitely coming true. We are seeing them in clinical trials more and more. Honey is good for sore throats. It coats the throat. It kills the bacteria. Honey is good for a topical application. Honey is good for burns. There are many, many medicinal uses of honey. Try and get it in its raw, organic, unfiltered, unpasteurized form from a local market. Locally grown is better because it's the environment that you live in, so it gives you the things that you need to cope with the environmental pathogens that you have. It should be in every single medical cabinet, and it should be taken on a daily basis. You could take it mixed in with water. You could take it as a spoonful of medicine, because that's what honey is, one of the best medicines that we have from God. It's a blessing, so really use it as much as you can as an alternative to all of the other things that we've spoken about.
It's such really amazing advice, honestly. It's so easy to use and it's so appealing. And I don't
It's so delicious.
So delicious,
Yes.
and there's no reason not to try it. So do go ahead and try that if you are experiencing the issues that were brought up that honey can actually help with. And call in and tell us how it went for you, and do contact us on our website. We actually have our website on the screen right now. We'd love to hear from you. And I think that brings us to the end of our show, unfortunately. But we would love to see you again tomorrow morning here at Rise Up. But until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.